Post Avis $80 million smackdown for hidden fees. Here's how to protect yourself. Screenshot online rates before counter upsells. Demand itemized breakdowns for those $12 to $18
Avis just got absolutely destroyed in court. We're talking millions of dollars in penalties. Payless car rental, same story. And right now, as you're watching this video, there's a claims deadline that's already passed that could have put money directly back into your pocket. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one lawsuit or one settlement. This is about an industry-wide scam that's been bleeding American consumers dry for decades. Hidden fees, undisclosed charges, mysterious add-ons that appear on your bill after you've already signed the contract. It's a system designed to confuse you, to overwhelm you, and to extract every last dollar from your wallet. And Avis and Payless, well, they just got caught red-handed. So buckle up, because in today's video, we're diving deep into the November court ruling that's sending shockwaves through the entire car rental industry. We're talking about millions in penalties, December fairness hearings, and absolutely shattered consumer trust. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at a rental car contract the same way again. But before we absolutely tear this industry apart, it's imperative you hit that like button and subscribe, so you get notified the minute we produce another game-changing video that protects your wallet and exposes corporate fraud. And I promise you'll appreciate it. So let's plunge straight in. The car rental industry in America isn't just broken, it's absolutely corrupt. And this November court ruling proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt. A federal judge ordered Avis Budget Group and its subsidiary Payless Car Rental to pay millions of dollars to U.S. customers who were systematically deceived by undisclosed add-on fees. Now, the claims deadline was November 10th. The fairness hearing is scheduled for December. And the entire industry is watching nervously, because this could be just the beginning of a consumer uprising that dismantles their entire fee structure. But here's what makes this case absolutely infuriating. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accounting error. This was deliberate, calculated deception designed to maximize profits at your expense. Internal documents revealed during discovery show that Avis executives knew exactly what they were doing. They knew customers were being charged fees that were never disclosed up front. They knew the advertised prices were essentially lies, and they did it anyway because the profit margins were just too good to resist. So what were these hidden fees? Well, let's break down the scam piece by piece, and I warn you, this is going to make your blood boil. First, we've got what they call customer facility charges. Now, this sounds official, right? It sounds like something legitimate, something that every rental company has to charge because it's mandated by the airport or the government. Wrong. These charges were discretionary fees that Avis and Payless tacked on to pad their bottom line. The average customer paid an extra $12 to $18 per day without ever being told what they were paying for. Multiply that across millions of rentals, and you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in pure profit built on deception. Then there's the vehicle licensing fee. Again, sounds legitimate. Sounds like something that covers the cost of registering and licensing their fleet. But here's the reality. The actual cost of licensing a vehicle is spread across its entire lifespan and across every rental. But Avis and Payless were charging customers as if each individual rental had to cover the full licensing cost. So you'd rent a car for 3 days and get charged a licensing fee that implied you were personally responsible for registering that vehicle. It's like going to a restaurant and being charged a separate fee for the cost of the building's construction every time you order a meal. Absolutely insane. And it gets worse. The concession recovery fee. Honey, this is the fee that rental companies charge to supposedly recover the costs of operating at airports. Now, airports do charge rental companies fees for the privilege of doing business on airport property. That's legitimate. But what Avis and Payless were doing was charging customers recovery fees that exceeded their actual cost by as much as 40%. So they were using a legitimate expense as cover to gouge customers for pure profit, and they never disclosed this markup. Never explained that the recovery fee wasn't actually recovering their costs, but was instead generating windfall profits. Then we've got the energy surcharge. This one is particularly offensive. See, when gas prices go up, rental companies institute these energy surcharges to offset their increased fuel costs. Fine, that makes sense in theory. But Avis and Payless kept charging these surcharges long after gas prices had dropped. They'd implement the fee when oil hit $120 a barrel, and then they'd conveniently forget to remove it when oil dropped back to $60 a barrel. So customers were paying surcharges for costs that no longer existed. It's pure theft dressed up as operational necessity. And let's not forget the insurance scams. Avis and Payless representatives at rental counters were trained, and I mean specifically trained, to pressure customers into buying additional insurance coverage without clearly explaining what their existing insurance or credit card benefits already covered. Internal training materials revealed during the lawsuit showed that employees were coached on language designed to create fear and confusion. They'd say things like, If anything happens to this vehicle, you could be personally liable for tens of thousands of dollars. Technically true, but deliberately misleading, because most customers' existing policies already provided coverage. The goal wasn't to protect customers. The goal was to sell insurance with profit margins exceeding 70%. Now, here's where the November ruling gets really interesting. The court didn't just order Avis and Payless to pay restitution. The judge specifically called out the companies for systematic and deliberate practices designed to deceive consumers. That language is critical because it moves this beyond a simple consumer protection violation into the realm of fraud. And that means the penalties go beyond just making customers whole. It means punitive damages designed to punish the companies and deter future misconduct. So how much money are we talking about? Well, the exact settlement amount is partially sealed, but court documents suggest the total payout could exceed $80 million. That includes direct restitution to customers who can prove they were overcharged, administrative costs for processing claims, and legal fees for the plaintiff's attorneys who spent years fighting this case. Now, $80 million sounds like a lot, but put it in perspective. Avis Budget Group reported revenues of $12 billion last year, so this settlement represents less than 1% of their annual revenue. It's a slap on the wrist for a company that systematically defrauded millions of customers over the course of a decade. And here's the part that should absolutely outrage you. The claims deadline was November 10th. Did you know about it? Did you receive notification? Most people didn't. Despite the court ordering Avis and Payless to notify affected customers, the notification process was deliberately opaque. They sent emails to addresses that might be years out of date. They placed small print notices on their websites that were buried 3 clicks deep. They did everything they could to minimize the number of people who would actually file claims. Because every customer who doesn't file a claim is money that stays in their pockets instead of going back to the people they defrauded. Now, if you rented from Avis or Payless between 2015 and 2024, you were likely affected. But if you missed the November 10th deadline, well, you're probably out of luck for direct restitution. However, and this is important, the December fairness hearing could open new avenues for relief. See, during fairness hearings, the court reviews the settlement terms to ensure they're actually fair to the class members. If enough people object, if enough evidence emerges that the settlement is inadequate, the judge can reject it and send the parties back to the negotiating table. So there's still a chance, albeit a small one, that additional relief could be ordered. But let's zoom out for a minute because this case isn't happening in isolation. The car rental industry is under siege right now, and Avis and Payless are just the tip of the iceberg. Enterprise Rent-A-Car is facing similar lawsuits in California and Florida. Hertz just settled a class action for $52 million over GPS tracking devices that they installed in rental cars without customer consent. Budget, which is owned by the same parent company as Avis, is dealing with allegations of racial discrimination in how they assess charges for vehicle damage. The entire industry is being exposed as a predatory ecosystem designed to extract maximum revenue from customers who are often tired, stressed, and vulnerable. And you want to know why this keeps happening? Because the business model depends on it. See, car rental companies advertise incredibly low base rates to lure you in. $29 a day, $35 a day. Sounds great, right? But those rates are loss leaders. They're designed to get you in the door, to get you to make the reservation, to get you committed. And then once you're standing at the counter after a long flight, exhausted and just wanting to get to your hotel, that's when they hit you with the fees. The vehicle licensing fee, the customer facility charge, the energy surcharge, the insurance upsell, the GPS rental at $15 a day, even though your phone has GPS built in, the prepaid gas option that charges you $4 a gallon when the gas station across the street is charging $2.50. By the time you drive off the lot, that $29 a day rental has magically become $85 a day. And you can't do anything about it because you need the car. You've got meetings to attend, family to visit, a vacation to enjoy. So you pay. You grumble about it. Maybe you swear you'll never use that company again, but you pay. And that's exactly what they're counting on. Now, consumer advocates have been screaming about this for years. The Federal Trade Commission has received literally hundreds of thousands of complaints about car rental fees. State attorneys general have launched investigations. Consumer protection agencies have issued warnings. But nothing changes because the penalties for getting caught are lower than the profits from continuing the scam. An $80 million settlement sounds huge until you realize Avis Budget Group probably made 10 times that amount from the very fees that are the subject of the lawsuit. So what does this mean for you as a consumer? Well, first and foremost, it means you need to be absolutely paranoid when renting a car. And I don't use that word lightly. You need to assume that every single person you interact with, from the online booking system to the counter representative, is trying to scam you. That sounds cynical, but this November ruling proves it's accurate. When you book online, screenshot everything. The advertised rate, the breakdown of fees, the terms and conditions, all of it. Because when you get to the counter, that rate is going to magically increase. And when you point it out, they're going to tell you the online rate didn't include mandatory fees. Having screenshots gives you leverage to dispute charges later. Never, and I mean never, accept the first price they quote you at the counter. Ask for an itemized breakdown of every single charge. Make them explain what each fee is for. Ask if it's mandatory or optional. Ask if it's regulated by the government or set by the company. The goal is to make them uncomfortable, to make them second guess whether you're the kind of customer who's going to push back or file complaints. Because rental counter employees work on commission from upsells, and if they sense you're going to be more trouble than you're worth, they'll often quietly remove some of the discretionary fees. Refuse all insurance products unless you've verified you have absolutely no coverage from your existing policies or credit cards. And I mean verified. Call your insurance company before your trip. Call your credit card company. Get confirmation in writing of exactly what's covered, because the rental company representative is going to paint a terrifying picture of financial ruin if you decline their coverage. They're going to tell you horror stories about customers who totaled cars and ended up owing $50,000. Don't fall for it. In most cases, you're already covered. Never prepay for gas. I don't care how convenient it sounds. The prepaid gas option is a scam 99% of the time. They charge you premium rates for gas and then rarely give you credit for unused fuel. Just fill up the tank yourself at a regular gas station before you return the car. Yes, it's slightly less convenient, but you'll save $30 to $50 on a typical rental. Document everything about the car's condition before you drive off. And I mean everything. Every scratch, every dent, every stain on the upholstery. Take photos with timestamps. Take video, walk around the entire car with a rental company employee and make them acknowledge every single piece of existing damage. Because when you return that car, they're going to try to charge you for damage that was already there. It's one of the oldest scams in the book, and it happens thousands of times every single day. And here's a pro tip that most people don't know. If you do get charged for damage, demand to see the repair invoice, not an estimate, an actual invoice from an actual repair shop showing that actual work was done. In most cases, they can't produce one because the damage was either already there or was so minor it didn't actually require repair. But they charged you anyway because they know most customers won't fight back. Now, let's talk about what this November ruling means for the industry going forward. Because the December fairness hearing isn't just about approving or rejecting this specific settlement. It's about setting a precedent for how courts handle hidden fee cases in the future. If the judge approves the settlement and it's perceived as a slap on the wrist, other rental companies will see it as the cost of doing business, and nothing will change. But if the judge rejects the settlement as inadequate, if consumer advocates raise enough objections, if there's enough public pressure, it could force a fundamental restructuring of how car rental fees are disclosed and charged. And there's reason to be cautiously optimistic. See, this case came on the heels of new FTC regulations that were proposed specifically to crack down on junk fees across multiple industries. The Biden administration has made hidden fees a priority issue, recognizing that these practices disproportionately harm working-class Americans who can't afford to lawyer up every time they get overcharged. The FTC has proposed rules that would require companies to display the total price upfront, including all mandatory fees, with no exceptions. If those rules are finalized, they would fundamentally change the car rental business model. But here's the problem. The rental car industry is lobbying furiously to kill those regulations. They're arguing that the fees are necessary to cover real costs, that consumers benefit from low advertised rates, even if the final price is higher, that market competition will naturally resolve any problems. It's all nonsense, of course, but they're spending millions on lobbying and litigation to preserve their ability to deceive customers. And they might win. Because while $80 million sounds like a lot to individual consumers, it's a rounding error for the industry. The American Car Rental Association, which represents the major rental companies, has already issued a statement calling the November ruling overly broad and based on a misunderstanding of industry practices. Translation: they have no intention of changing anything unless they're forced to. So what happens next? Well, the December fairness hearing will be critical. If you were affected by these hidden fees, if you rented from Avis or Payless anytime in the last decade, you have the right to submit an objection to the settlement. You can argue that the penalties aren't severe enough. You can demand that the court impose stricter monitoring and compliance requirements. You can push for changes that will actually protect consumers going forward, rather than just writing a check and calling it justice. But even if this specific case gets resolved, the broader war is just beginning, because hidden fees aren't limited to car rentals. Airlines do it with baggage fees and seat selection charges. Hotels do it with resort fees and parking charges. Ticketing companies do it with service fees that sometimes exceed the ticket price itself. It's an epidemic of corporate deception that's costing American consumers billions of dollars every single year. And the rental car industry is watching this case very, very carefully. If Avis and Payless get away with a relatively small settlement and no structural changes, every other company is going to breathe a sigh of relief and continue business as usual. But if the court comes down hard, if there are ongoing monitoring requirements, if there are criminal referrals for the executives who designed these deceptive practices, Well, that changes everything. That sends a message that fraud has consequences, that corporations can't just budget for lawsuits as a cost of doing business, that consumers have power and courts will protect them. Now, I want to be clear about something. Not everyone in the car rental industry is a scammer. There are honest employees who hate these practices as much as customers do. There are franchisees who push back against corporate mandates to upsell unnecessary products. There are regional managers who try to create cultures of transparency and customer service. But they're fighting against a system that's rigged from the top down, a system where profit targets and shareholder returns trump everything else, a system where executives get bonuses for hitting revenue goals regardless of how those revenues are generated. And that system is what needs to change. The November ruling against Avis and Payless is a start, but it's only a start. Real change requires regulatory reform. It requires enforcement with teeth. It requires consumers who are informed, vigilant, and willing to fight back. Because these companies are betting that you won't. They're betting that you'll just pay the fees and move on with your life. They're betting that the hassle of disputing charges or filing complaints or joining class action lawsuits isn't worth your time. And for most people, they're right, which is why this behavior continues, which is why this November ruling is simultaneously encouraging and depressing. Encouraging because it shows the system can work, that courts will hold corporations accountable, that justice is possible. Depressing because it took years of litigation, millions in legal fees, and the work of dedicated attorneys to achieve what should be basic corporate behavior: honest pricing, transparent fees, treating customers with respect rather than as marks to be exploited. So where does this leave us as we head into December and this critical fairness hearing? Well, it leaves us at a crossroads. One path leads to real reform, to an industry that's forced to operate honestly, to protections that actually protect consumers. The other path leads to business as usual with slightly smaller profit margins, and a promise to be more careful about getting caught next time. Which path we take depends on whether consumers stay engaged, whether we demand accountability, whether we're willing to look at that rental car receipt and question every single charge rather than just grumbling and paying it, whether we file complaints with state attorneys general and the FTC and consumer protection agencies every single time we're scammed, whether we vote with our wallets and reward companies that operate honestly while punishing those that don't. Because here's the ultimate truth that the car rental industry doesn't want you to understand. They need you more than you need them. In an age of ride sharing and public transportation and remote work, personal car rentals are becoming increasingly optional for many people. The industry is terrified of losing customers, which is why they're so desperate to extract maximum revenue from every transaction. They know their business model is under threat, so they're squeezing every last dollar while they still can. And that gives you power. The power to refuse to do business with companies that lie to you. The power to demand transparency and honest pricing. The power to support alternatives that treat customers with respect. The power to make this November ruling the beginning of real change rather than just another cost of doing business. The Avis and Payless settlement should be a wake-up call for every American consumer. It should be a reminder that corporate fraud isn't limited to financial institutions or pharmaceutical companies. It's happening every single day in mundane transactions that we don't think twice about. A car rental, a hotel room, a concert ticket. Each one is an opportunity for a company to hide fees, inflate charges, and take your money dishonestly. And if we let them get away with it in car rentals, they'll keep doing it everywhere else. The December fairness hearing is about more than just Avis and Payless. It's about whether we as a society are going to tolerate this kind of corporate behavior. It's about whether the penalties for fraud are going to be severe enough to actually change behavior. It's about whether consumer protection means anything more than words in a legal document that companies ignore, because the fines are too small to matter. So pay attention to what happens in that courtroom. Read the court documents when they are made public. Submit your objection if you have standing. Support the consumer advocates who are fighting on your behalf. And most importantly, change how you interact with the car rental industry. Be skeptical, be informed, be demanding, because that's the only language these companies understand. The hidden fee outrage that brought down Avis and Payless isn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom of an industry-wide disease, and the cure isn't going to come from the companies themselves. It's going to come from consumers who refuse to be victims, from regulators who are willing to impose real penalties, from courts that see through corporate excuses and hold executives personally accountable. This November ruling is a victory, but it's a small one. The war is far from over, and whether we win or lose depends on whether we stay angry, stay engaged, and stay committed to demanding the honest business practices that should be the bare minimum but have somehow become a radical demand. So, which of these rental companies do you think deserves your business? Have you been hit with hidden fees that you didn't understand? Let me know in the comments below, because your stories matter. Your experiences are evidence, and collectively, we have the power to force change that no single lawsuit can achieve. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, And share this video because the fight against corporate fraud doesn't end with Avis and Payless. There are more stories to expose, more scams to uncover, and more companies that need to be held accountable. Hit that subscribe button so you're notified the minute we drop our next video exposing the corporations that are picking your pocket. Drop a comment sharing your own rental car horror stories. And share this video with anyone you know who's ever rented a car because they need to know what they're up against. The hidden fees aren't going away on their own, but together we can make them too expensive for companies to keep charging. So take care, my fellow consumers, and I'll see you in the comments and in the next video where we continue fighting for your wallet and your rights.